Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be sharing my life story here, but I need to get this off my chest. My name is Jake, and this is the story of how I left my family due to years of neglect, only for them to suddenly want me back when they needed help. I grew up in a house that never felt like home. My parents, Mark and Linda, had always favored my younger brother Dylan. It wasn't subtle either, it was blatant. Dylan got the praise, the gifts, the attention, while I was left to fend for myself. Whenever I brought up how unfair it felt, I was brushed aside or told I was being dramatic. My childhood was filled with nights of eating dinner alone while my parents took Dylan out to his soccer games, birthdays forgotten, and achievements ignored. I remember winning a regional science fair in high school, only to come home to silence because Dylan had a minor role in his school play the same day. It crushed me. By the time I turned 18, I had enough. College was my escape. I left for university in another state and barely looked back. I built my own life. I worked hard, got my degree, and started a job in cybersecurity. It wasn't easy, but I was finally free. For years, my relationship with my parents was distant at best. They never called unless they needed something, and when they did, it was always about Dylan. Jake, could you send Dylan some money? He's struggling. Jake, can you help Dylan with his resume? Not once did they ask how I was doing. Then, one day, I got a call that changed everything. Jake, it's your father. We need to talk. I was shocked. My dad never called me. Your mother is sick. We need you to come home. I froze. My mother had never been there for me, yet I couldn't ignore the news. I debated it for days before finally agreeing to visit. Returning home was surreal. I hadn't been back in nearly a decade. As I walked around town, I ran into my childhood best friend, Emily. She had always been there for me before I left, and seeing her again brought back memories. She helped me process my emotions, and as we reconnected, I realized how much I had missed having someone who truly cared about me. When I arrived at my parents' house, I was met with an atmosphere of tension. My mother looked frail, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. After some digging, I found out that while she was indeed sick, my parents were also facing severe financial troubles. Their business had failed, and Dylan, the golden child, had racked up massive debts. That was the real reason they wanted me back. Dylan, who had always been the family's pride, was now struggling. He had lost his job, his friends, and was drowning in loans. My parents had used up most of their savings bailing him out, and now they expected me to step in. The breaking point came during a family dinner. My dad outright asked me for a loan, a huge one, to help pay off Dylan's debts. I was furious. So, let me get this straight. You ignored me for years, never cared about me unless you needed something, and now that Dylan has screwed up, you suddenly remember I exist? My mother tried to guilt trip me. Jake, we're family. We need to stick together. I laughed bitterly. Family? Where was this family when I was a kid eating alone? When I graduated and no one showed up? You only need me now because Dylan is a failure. Dylan, who had been silent, exploded. You're just jealous. You always have been. Just because mom and dad love me more. I cut him off. Exactly. They love you more. So, let them deal with your mess. The room went silent. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and left. I stayed in town for a few more days, catching up with Emily and thinking things over. She helped me see that I wasn't obligated to fix my parents' mistakes. A week later, I sent my parents an email. I told them I was done. I wouldn't be their backup plan. If they ever wanted to truly reconcile as a real family, I might be open to it. But as long as I was just their safety net, I wanted nothing to do with them. They never replied. Months passed, and I found peace knowing I had chosen myself. I stayed in touch with Emily, and our friendship grew into something more. For the first time in my life, I felt like I mattered, not as someone's backup plan, but as a person. If there's one thing I learned from all this, it's that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to walk away. And I have no regrets.